Guess what? You just walked into the best virtual party on YouTube. If this is your first time, grab a digital snack, hit that subscribe button, and share this video like confetti. And hey, where are you watching from? I want to know which city or country just joined the party. Let's get started. My name is Alan. I'm 30 years old and have spent nearly a decade working as an aircraft technician. The job is demanding, but it's stable, and it pays reliably. My wife Kimberly owns a salon right in the center of the city. She always looks like she just stepped off a magazine cover, fashionable without effort, as if she was born with an instinct for elegance. We've been together 7 years, married for 5. I believed our foundation was steady. Not flawless, sure, but strong enough to hold. Kimberly has always gravitated toward the luxurious side of life. Designer bags, expensive meals, spur-of-the-moment indulgences, they weren't occasional. I covered most of it quietly, never pushing back. To me, her happiness was a part of preserving our connection. But that equation shifted when Serafina Doss reappeared in her world. Serafina was an old college friend, bold, assertive, and impossible to ignore. The moment she entered a room, she owned it. Her voice boomed with confidence, punctuated by self-help buzzwords you'd see printed in cursive on a canvas. Know your value, never compromise. Life is short, aim higher. She told us she was visiting for a girls' weekend. From the first night, the air in our home changed. At dinner, I asked how her flight was. She brushed it off and turned to Kimberly with a sly smile. "You know, Kim," she said, "women aren't supposed to carry everything alone. If a man isn't stepping up, someone else will." She threw the last line in my direction with a smirk. Kimberly didn't say much, but she nodded. The pattern repeated itself over the next couple of days. Serafina would drop sharp little comments, always aimed at relationships, money, and what women should expect from men. Kimberly laughed harder at Serafina's stories than she had at mine in recent memory. I stayed quiet. I listened. I paid attention. There was no point in starting something, not yet. But I noticed how intently Kimberly watched her, how absorbed she looked. Serafina left on Sunday, but the tension she stirred up stayed behind. Kimberly became quieter with me, but glued to her phone, messaging Serafina nonstop. I told myself not to overreact. We'd had silent spells before. Then, a few days later, I saw something that stripped away every doubt. We had an old tablet synced to Kimberly's iCloud account. I occasionally used it to check flight manuals and reference material. That evening, I opened it for work and saw a freshly uploaded voice memo. Curious, I tapped play. Serafina's voice filled the room instantly. "Kimberly, it's time to reset things. Tell Alan you need space. Go somewhere else for a few days. Make him think you might walk away. If he fights for you, great. If he doesn't, well, maybe that's your answer. Don't waste more time waiting for someone to start valuing you." The calm confidence in her tone made my stomach turn. This wasn't an offhand opinion. It was a plan. And Kimberly? She had listened. I closed the tablet, said nothing. The next evening, as I was about to leave for my shift, Kimberly came to me. She cleared her throat. "Alan," she said softly, "I think I need a little time for myself. Maybe a week, to figure things out." I kept my expression even. "Where are you going to stay?" She paused. "With Serafina." I didn't argue, I didn't beg. All I said was, "You should do what feels right to you." A flicker of confusion crossed her face, like she was waiting for some resistance that never arrived. She packed light, gave me a kiss on the cheek like it was any other Tuesday, and walked out the door. Later that night, I got an alert from our shared credit card. She'd used a rideshare service, but it didn't drop her off at Serafina's. The destination was the Linden Hotel on the other side of town. About an hour later, another notification came through. A tab from a rooftop bar for 2 people. The next morning, I checked our connected digital wallets. That's when something new appeared. A transfer had been made to Kimberly's personal account. It was from a man named Samuel Graves. The message attached said, "Last night was perfect." I took a screenshot. My hands didn't even shake. Serafina had offered her strategy. Kimberly had followed it step by step. Now I finally grasped what Kimberly meant by her so-called reset. She wasn't bothering to mask her intentions anymore. Maybe she assumed I was too slow-witted or too docile to catch on. But she had miscalculated. That Tuesday, while I was grabbing coffee in the break room, my coworker Callan Briggs approached me with a serious look on his face. "Alan," he said, measuring his words, "is everything all right with you and Kimberly?" I gave him a curious glance and he elaborated. "My wife saw her at Bellamy's wine bar last night. She was with some tall guy, brown hair. They were pretty close, not in a platonic way." He didn't need to say more. I got the message. "Appreciate you letting me know," I replied, keeping my tone deliberately flat. That evening, I pulled up the activity log from our smart lock system. Not once had Kimberly returned since the day she walked out. No entries, no pings, nothing. So much for her claim about staying with Serafina. I thought back to the small suitcase she took with her, one of ours that still had an AirTag clipped inside. I checked its last known location. The signal traced back to Bayview Residences, a high-end complex across the city. Nowhere near Serafina's family home. Next, I opened our joint credit card statement. Midday charges at boutique stores, a lavish $220 seafood dinner, a late-night charge at a dessert bar. This didn't reflect someone soul-searching alone, reevaluating her marriage. It looked more like someone enjoying their freedom, on my dime. I didn't bring it up to her, not yet. Instead, I went to the bank, opened a new account, and rerouted my direct deposit. That night, I sat at the kitchen table collecting everything. Screenshots from the AirTag, receipts, flagged transactions, even Samuel's handwritten note. I organized it all into a single, well-labeled folder. The next morning, Kimberly texted me like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Morning. Hope your shift wasn't too bad. Still working through things. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk." I stared at the message briefly, then placed my phone face down. She was under the impression I was still waiting for her. What she didn't know was that I was already making my move. By Thursday, I realized staying quiet wasn't enough anymore. I needed to cover myself legally. I contacted Dravenholt, a lawyer one of my retired co-workers had spoken highly of. I started vague. "What's the protocol if one partner uses joint finances to fund an affair?" He answered without missing a beat. "That's classified as wasting marital assets. Courts take that seriously, especially if you've documented it." Which fortunately I had. Draven advised me to keep gathering proof but not to stall. "You need to shut down her access," he said plainly. "Don't let her keep draining your resources. And whatever happens, keep your composure. Judges notice who remains level-headed." That very afternoon, I called the bank and closed the shared credit card, the one she'd been using for her escapades. The banker gave me a puzzled look, but didn't ask for an explanation. Within 60 minutes, Kimberly was effectively locked out of my finances. Later that evening, I climbed into the attic and brought down the storage bins. I wasn't tossing her things, I was preparing them for easy pickup. By the weekend's end, my accounts were secure, her possessions boxed, and the paperwork underway. She believed she was testing my limits. What she didn't realize was that I was already executing a strategy, one she wouldn't see coming. Then, on Sunday evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Kimberly lit up the screen. "Hey, I think I'm ready to talk. Tuesday after work?" She ended it with a heart emoji, as if we were just another couple trying to smooth things over dinner. I stared at her message for a few seconds before responding. "Tuesday at 6 works." That's all I wrote. The next morning, I sorted and labeled every piece of evidence, placing it all neatly inside a folder. Right on top, I added the divorce papers Draven had drawn up. I stacked her packed boxes near the entrance. At 5:55 p.m. on Tuesday, the doorbell camera sent me an alert. Kimberly had arrived. I hadn't expected Serafina to step out of the vehicle beside her. The doorbell rang. I counted to 10 before answering. Kimberly stood on the porch, smiling as if we were on friendly terms, with Serafina positioned just behind her. "Alan," she said in a warm tone, "it's really nice to see you." I stepped aside and gestured toward the living room. "Come in." Their eyes immediately fell on the neatly stacked moving boxes by the entryway. Kimberly's expression faltered for just a moment before she composed herself and walked in. Serafina shot me a smug grin, the kind of look that suggested she believed they'd already won. "You've been organizing," Kimberly commented under her breath. "Structure helps," I replied flatly. They both eased onto the couch like they expected me to initiate things, maybe argue, plead, or lose my composure. I didn't do any of that. Instead, I slid a folder across the coffee table toward them. "Everything's documented," I said. "We'll go through each page." For once, Serafina didn't have a snide remark. Kimberly looked down at the folder, then back at me, clearly unsettled. She had no idea what I'd gathered. The first document was a printed hotel receipt from the Linden, complete with timestamp and room number. Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. I flipped to the next page, a screenshot from the AirTag tracking app. A blinking dot showed up at a Bayview apartment complex. Her eyes grew wide. "What is this?" she asked quietly. "That," I replied calmly, "is where your suitcase spent the night." Serafina leaned forward suddenly, her voice sharp. "Alan, this is extreme. Kimberly just needed time to clear her head. She's here now trying to talk. You should be thankful." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned to the next sheet. A payment confirmation, transferred directly to someone named Samuel. Kimberly's face drained of color. "Samuel?" I said, staring straight at her. "Doesn't sound like a therapist, or a life coach, or anyone who's guiding you through a spiritual breakthrough. He sounds like a man you've been seeing, on our dime." Kimberly's hands shook as she shut the folder. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered. "It just happened." Serafina snapped back defensively. "Don't twist this into my fault," she said. "I told her to test your loyalty, not to start sleeping with Samuel." I raised a hand, cutting them both off. "That's enough," I said coldly. "You two can debate who influenced who some other time. Right now we're dealing with facts." I pointed at the folder. "You followed her advice. You cheated. You lied about where you were. You used my money to cover it up." Kimberly reached out toward me, her eyes glassy with tears. "Alan, please, I was confused. I didn't feel like you cared anymore. Samuel made me feel seen, but I never meant for it to go that far." I slid one final page forward. "The divorce papers. You let it go as far as you wanted it to," I said. "And now I'm setting my boundary. We're finished." Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. "Don't throw away 5 years because of one mistake," she pleaded. "One mistake?" I echoed, leaning in slightly. "This wasn't a single moment of weakness. This was repeated dishonesty, nights in hotels, dinner reservations, and a man's name stored in your contacts. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a conscious pattern." Serafina looked like she wanted to speak again, but one hard look from me silenced her. Kimberly's sobs filled the room, but I didn't flinch. My decision had been made long before they arrived. Once they left, the phone began ringing. First it was Kimberly's mother, Clarissa, her voice soft and calculated. "Alan," she began gently, "Kimberly's just confused. Relationships go through rough patches. You don't end a marriage over one bump in the road." I kept my tone steady. "Clarissa, this wasn't confusion. It was nights at hotels, romantic meals, and someone else living off my finances. I've already signed the documents." She let out a drawn-out sigh, like I was the unreasonable one. An hour later, her brother Everett called. "Man up, Alan," he said. "Women test us sometimes. You don't just walk away, you fight for your marriage." "I don't fight to keep someone who's already chosen to leave," I replied. And then I hung up. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. One relative after another, her aunts, cousins, even her grandmother, called in waves, each one repeating the same rehearsed plea. Marriage requires patience. Forgiveness is part of the journey. Don't throw it all away. I kept my answer consistent. It's all documented in the papers. Then I hung up. Lucinda came by that Wednesday night. "Stop answering," she said bluntly. "Eat something. Sleep. Let them shout into the wind if they want." Her no-nonsense attitude was exactly the kind of support I needed. Later that evening, my phone lit up again. This time it was a message from Callan, a guy I work with. He sent a screenshot of one of Serafina's latest cryptic social media posts. "Already talking trash," he wrote. "Pretty clear she's taken jabs, saying you couldn't handle a strong woman." I read it once, didn't respond. It didn't warrant a reply. At the hangar, I threw myself into the job. Kept busy, kept moving. The busier my hands were, the less space my mind had to wander. At home, the quiet settled in like a blanket. But it wasn't an empty silence, it was peaceful. No TV blaring in the background. No forced small talk or cold dinners. Just stillness. Kimberly and her people thought they could chip away at me with guilt and persistence. They miscalculated. Each voicemail, each lecture only sharpened my resolve. There was nothing to rescue. The marriage had already ended. It just hadn't been finalized yet. On Friday night, she returned to collect what remained of her things. This time she came alone. No Serafina shadowing her every step. Her eyes were swollen, her mascara faintly smudged. Still she met my gaze. "Can we talk? Just us?" she asked softly. "There's nothing left to discuss," I told her. My words weren't bitter, just settled, firm. She tried again, voice trembling. "I made a mistake. I should have listened to you instead of Serafina. Samuel, he wasn't important. It was a lapse in judgment. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't flinch." "You didn't make one mistake," I replied calmly. "This wasn't a single misstep. You made a string of choices, repeatedly. A simple sorry doesn't erase the hotel bookings, the wire transfers, or the months of deceit. It's done." Her lip trembled, and she gave a small nod. But she lingered by the open trunk, like she was hoping I'd say something, anything, to stop her. I didn't. She eventually climbed into the car and drove away. Later that night, one final message arrived on my phone. "I destroyed everything. Maybe one day you'll forgive me." I left it unopened. When the settlement process began, she didn't even argue over the house. It had been mine before we ever walked down the aisle. She moved into a small rental on the east side, modest, functional. No attached garage, no flower beds. Just something she could manage without anyone's help. And Samuel? That didn't last. Men like him enjoy the thrill, not the aftermath. Once the shared bank accounts dried up and the utilities landed in her name, his interest disappeared. Within a month, they weren't seen together at all. She walked away with nothing. Lost the roof over her head. Lost the marriage she thought was her safety net. And lost the man she had bet everything on. I put the framed jet engine blueprint back on the wall in the living room. Not for style, but as a reminder of the work that built this home, and of the focus and resolve that would keep it standing long after she left. The barrage of calls eventually faded to silence. Draven called to confirm the legal side had been processed smoothly. No objections, no resistance. Serafina still posted her little cryptic quotes online now and then. I no longer paid them any attention. That Sunday I sat on the back steps of the house. The life I'd built with my own hands was still intact, solid, grounded. Kimberly followed Serafina's whispers and walked out on us. But she never expected me to hold my ground. No shouting. No begging. Just stillness. And in the end, that silence said more than all their noise combined.